battlefield was never silent. Smoke rose in the distance, and the ground still trembled from the machines that had passed hours earlier. Human soldiers moved carefully through the ruins of a broken outpost. The air was filled with a strange, metallic smell, a reminder of alien weapons that burned everything they touched. Somewhere among the wreckage, life still clung on. Dr. Daniel Hart, a combat medic, pushed aside a shattered wall panel and stepped into the dim corridor. His boots splashed through shallow puddles of water mixed with fuel. He carried his medical, packed close, scanning with sharp eyes. His orders were simple: find survivors. But no one had said anything about what kind of survivors he might find. The silence broke with a faint sound. It was not a cry, not even a word, but more like a weak gasp. Daniel froze, his pulse quickening. He followed the sound deeper inside until he found her. Lying on a broken bed, half covered in white dust, was a figure that should not have been there at all. Her skin shone in deep violet under the flickering light. Her black hair was tangled across her face, her chest rising with shallow breaths. One arm was missing from the shoulder down, the wound sealed crudely with a strange metallic clamp. Daniel knelt beside her. For a long moment he just stared. She was not human. Everything about her appearance screamed alien, but at the same time she looked fragile, almost too human to ignore. Her features were sharp yet soft, and her lips trembled as she tried to breathe. She looked young, maybe no older than him, and blood stained the shredded fabric of what looked like military clothing. He reached out slowly, placing 2 fingers against her neck. A pulse. Weak, unsteady, but there. Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His training told him to act. The war outside said she was the enemy. But his heart reminded him of something else. A patient was a patient, no matter the species. Her eyes flickered open for a second, revealing glowing silver irises. They fixed on him with confusion and pain. She tried to speak, but only a broken sound came out before her head fell back. Daniel tightened his jaw. He had no translator, no way of understanding her language, but he understood enough. She wanted to live. He opened his pack quickly. Gauze, sealant spray, stabilizers. The wound was terrible, but it was clean enough to save her life if he acted now. His hands moved fast, pressing sealant across the torn flesh where her arm once was. She flinched, her whole body arching in pain, but she did not pull away. Her breathing grew louder, rougher, but she endured. Another soldier appeared at the doorway, his rifle raised. "Hart, what the hell are you doing?" the man shouted. His voice was sharp, and his eyes locked on the girl. "That's not one of us. Leave it." Daniel did not answer. He pressed the bandage down firmly, ignoring the blood seeping through. "She's alive," he said simply. "If I leave her, she dies. I can't do that." The soldier cursed under his breath and lowered his weapon slightly. Outside, the sound of gunfire echoed again. Time was running short, but Daniel kept working. He wrapped the bandage tight, injected a stabilizer into her shoulder, and wiped the blood from her lips. Slowly, her breathing steadied. Her chest rose, with more strength, and her face softened in relief. When Daniel finally sat back, sweat ran down his face. He looked at the girl, then at his comrade. She was still unconscious, but alive. Against every rule, against every warning, he had made his choice. The air outside the ruined outpost thundered with distant explosions, a reminder that the war was still raging. Daniel adjusted the straps of his pack, keeping his eyes fixed on the unconscious girl. Her violet skin gleamed faintly under the broken ceiling light, and the bandages on her shoulder were already stained with fresh blood. He knew he had bought her time, nothing more. If she was going to survive, he had to move her to a safer place. "Are you insane, Hart?" The soldier at the doorway whispered harshly. His rifle was lowered now, but his tone was sharp. "You're risking your life. For that, she isn't one of us." Daniel met his eyes without flinching. "She's alive, that's enough for me." He stood, sliding his arms carefully under the girl's body. She was lighter than he expected, though her frame was strong, built for a different kind of world. Her head rested against his chest, her breathing steady but shallow, The soldier cursed again but did not stop him. Outside, the air was thick with smoke. Daniel pushed forward, carrying her carefully over the rubble. Every step made him more aware of the risk. If they were spotted, neither of them would stand a chance. Halfway across the shattered courtyard, the girl stirred. Her silver eyes fluttered open again, catching the faint glow of firelight. She lifted her head slightly, confusion filling her gaze. Her lips moved as if trying to form words, but only a soft rasp escaped. Daniel tightened his grip, whispering, without thinking, "It's okay. You're safe, I've got you." Her gaze lingered on him, searching his face as if she wanted to understand. Then her eyes closed again, and her body went limp in his arms. When they reached the field station hidden beneath a collapsed bunker, Daniel set her down gently on a makeshift cot. The small space was dim but quieter than the battlefield above. He pulled fresh bandages from his pack and began cleaning her wound again. As he worked, he studied her face. She was striking. Elegant features, strong cheekbones, and an expression that, even in unconsciousness, carried both pride and exhaustion. The soldier who had followed him finally spoke. "You know command will never forgive this, right? If they find out, you'll be court-martialed. Helping her is treason." Daniel didn't look up. He secured the last strip of bandage and injected another dose of stabilizer. "If saving a life makes me a traitor, then maybe the war is already lost," he said quietly. For a while there was only silence, broken by the faint hum of medical equipment. Then the girl moved again. Her fingers twitched, curling weakly against the blanket. Her eyes opened wider this time, and she focused directly on him. The silver glow in her gaze was brighter now, almost piercing. Daniel leaned closer. "Can you hear me? You're going to be okay." She tried to speak again, her voice hoarse. The words were strange, a language Daniel had never heard before. Still, the tone carried meaning. She was asking something. Pleading, perhaps. He shook his head, frustration biting at him. "I don't understand you," he admitted softly. Her hand lifted slowly, trembling. She pressed her fingers against his chest, right over his heart. For a moment, the war outside seemed to vanish. She looked into his eyes, and though no words passed between them, Daniel understood. She knew he had chosen to save her, and she trusted him. The soldier turned away, muttering under his breath, but Daniel remained still. Something about the way she clung to life, the way her gaze refused to break, stirred something deep inside him. This was more than just survival. This was the beginning of something he could not yet name, and outside the war drew closer. The field station shook as another blast thundered above. Dust rained down from the cracked ceiling, and Daniel tightened his grip on the cot's frame, making sure it didn't collapse on her. The alien girl stirred again, her breathing uneven. She was still weak, but her strength was returning bit by bit, as though her body fought against death itself. Daniel leaned closer, watching her eyelids flutter. She opened her eyes fully this time, silver orbs reflecting the dim light. Her gaze locked on his face, sharp and unyielding. For the first time, she managed to form a word in her own tongue. The sound was alien, layered with tones his ears struggled to separate. But she repeated it, softer, slower, pointing weakly at herself. Daniel frowned. Was it her name? He repeated the sound as best he could, clumsy but close. Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile, though it was laced with pain. She then tapped his chest again, waiting. Daniel hesitated, then gave his name clearly. Daniel. Her expression softened. Two names exchanged in the middle of a war, a fragile bridge between two worlds. The soldier who had followed him, Corporal Hayes, groaned. "This is insane. Hart, you're naming each other like old friends while our people are dying out there. You need to think about what you're doing." Daniel didn't reply. He adjusted the bandages again, careful not to cause more pain. The girl's missing arm was a raw reminder of how close she had come to death. Yet her eyes never left his, as if she drew strength from his presence. Minutes stretched into an hour. Hayes paced at the entrance, rifle ready, muttering curses about How Command would hang them both for this. Daniel ignored him, focused only on stabilizing her vitals. But soon, footsteps echoed in the tunnel. Heavy boots, more than one pair. Hayes froze, his eyes wide. Daniel's heart sank. Reinforcements, human soldiers, coming their way. The girl sensed it too. Her body tensed, her silver eyes flashing with fear. She tried to rise, but her strength betrayed her and she collapsed back onto the cot. Daniel pressed a hand gently to her shoulder. "Don't move. I'll handle this." A squad of 3 soldiers entered the chamber, weapons raised. Their leader, a stern-faced lieutenant, narrowed his eyes at the sight. What the hell is going on here? Daniel stood tall, keeping himself between them and the girl. "She's a survivor. I'm treating her injuries." The lieutenant's face twisted with disgust. "That's not a survivor, Hart. That's the enemy. You should have finished her off the second you saw her. Step aside." The girl's breathing quickened. Her gaze darted from soldier to soldier, then back to Daniel. Her hand clenched weakly into a fist, as if ready to fight even in her broken state. Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, she's under my care. If you want her dead, you'll have to go through me." The room went silent. Hayes looked between them, his jaw tight, but he didn't move. The other soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The lieutenant stepped forward, his voice low and cold. "Do you realize what you're saying? You're protecting an alien, Hart. That's treason." Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears, but he didn't waver. He met the lieutenant's gaze head on. "Call it what you want. I call it doing my job. A medic saves lives. That's what I swore to do. I won't stop now." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the failing lights. Then, to Daniel's surprise, one of the soldiers lowered his rifle slightly. His voice was hesitant. "Sir, she doesn't look like a threat anymore. Maybe we should let him finish, at least until command decides." The lieutenant's eyes narrowed, but before he could answer, another blast shook the ground. The walls cracked, dust filling the chamber. The squad staggered, and Daniel instinctively shielded the girl with his body. When the rumble stopped, the lieutenant's voice cut through the silence. "Fine, but this isn't over, Hart. The moment we're out of here, command will hear everything." He turned sharply and led his men back toward the surface. Daniel exhaled slowly, his hand still braced against the cot. The girl's eyes were wide, her gaze fixed on him. She had seen it, the choice he made, the defiance he risked. And in that silent look, trust grew deeper. For the first time, Daniel realized this wasn't just about saving one life anymore. This was about something larger, something that might change the course of the war itself. The silence in the bunker was heavy after the soldiers left. Dust still floated in the stale air, drifting down onto the cot where the alien girl lay. Daniel brushed it away gently, his hand steady though his heart was still racing. The girl's silver eyes followed every movement, sharp and unblinking as though she understood what had just happened. "You're safe for now," Daniel murmured, even though the words were more for himself than for her. She blinked slowly, then tried to sit up. Daniel caught her shoulders before she could strain the wound. "Easy," he said firmly. "You've lost too much blood. You need rest." Her lips parted, and another string of alien words slipped out, softer than before. He couldn't understand the language, but her tone carried determination. She tapped her chest again and repeated the same word as before. Her name. Daniel said it carefully, repeating the sound. She gave a faint nod. Then she pointed at him, waiting. "Daniel," he answered. Her lips moved, shaping his name awkwardly, the sound broken but clear. Niel. The sound stopped him. A simple attempt at his name, but it carried weight. She was trying, reaching across the gulf between them. He gave her a faint smile. "That's right." For a moment, the war outside felt far away, but the illusion shattered when Hayes, still standing by the entrance, spoke quietly. "You know this can't last, Hart. They'll come back, and next time they won't listen. Command won't let this go." Daniel sighed, pressing a fresh bandage into place. I know, but until then she lives. The girl watched the two men with alert eyes, as if she understood their unease without knowing the words. Her hand lifted again, trembling, and she drew a small circle over her heart, with her finger, a gesture, a symbol. Daniel didn't know what it meant, but the way she looked at him made it feel important. Hours passed in the dim bunker. Daniel kept working, feeding her sips of water, checking her vitals. Slowly, her strength grew. Her breathing steadied. Her color returned, and though she was weak, there was fire in her gaze. She no longer looked like a helpless patient. She looked like someone who had survived far worse than this. At one point, she whispered something that sounded like a question. Daniel shook his head helplessly. I wish I understood you. She frowned, then scanned the room. Her eyes fixed on a piece of charcoal lying near the rubble. With effort, she reached for it. Daniel quickly set a sheet of scrap paper in front of her. Her hand trembled, but she began to draw. Lines and symbols, curved shapes unlike any alphabet he knew. Daniel studied the markings, but they made no sense. Then she drew something different. A crude figure of a human, standing beside another figure with pointed features and one missing arm. She tapped the second figure, then herself. Daniel's breath caught. That's you, he whispered. She nodded weakly. Then she tapped the first figure and pointed at him. She had drawn them together. Hayes swore softly, turning away. This is madness. She's trying to pull you in. For all you know, this is some trick. Daniel ignored him. His eyes stayed on the girl, on the determination in her gaze. She was telling him something without words, that they were connected now, that her survival was tied to him. Above them, the rumble of engines grew louder. Daniel's chest tightened. More troops were arriving. Maybe even command itself. Time was running short, and he knew they couldn't hide here forever. He looked back at her. She was watching him, her silver eyes steady despite her weakness. For the first time, he saw not just a wounded alien, but someone who had chosen to trust him completely. And in that moment, Daniel realized that saving her was no longer just about duty. It was a promise, one that would push him into conflict with his own people if necessary. Engines roared above the shattered bunker, their sound echoing through the cracked ceiling. Daniel's pulse quickened. Whoever was out there was close, too close. Hayes glanced at him, his jaw tight. Command's here. If they find her, it's over. Daniel looked at the alien girl on the cot. She had grown stronger over the hours, but she was still pale and trembling. She couldn't run, not yet. But leaving her here meant certain death. He tightened his pack straps, already knowing the choice he had to make. We move now, Daniel said. Hayes shook his head. That's suicide. You'll be caught the second you step outside. Daniel leaned closer to the girl. We're leaving, he told her softly, even though she wouldn't understand the words. Her silver eyes searched his face, and she gave a faint nod. Trust again without hesitation. Hayes muttered something under his breath, but when Daniel lifted the girl carefully into his arms, Hayes stepped aside. You're going to drag us both into hell, he said. The tunnel leading out of the bunker was narrow, littered with debris. Daniel moved slowly, shielding her with his body. Every sound outside felt louder, the heavy boots of soldiers, the metallic grind of machinery. As they reached the broken hatch at the far end, Daniel risked a glance. The courtyard above was crawling with troops. Human soldiers patrolled the wreckage, scanning the ruins with searchlights. A transport shuttle rested nearby, its engines glowing faintly. They were setting up a forward base. Daniel's throat tightened. There was no way through. Not with her, in his arms. Then to his surprise, the girl stirred. She pressed her remaining hand against his chest, her silver eyes glowing faintly. She whispered something sharp, a word layered with tones that vibrated in the air. Suddenly a strange pulse shimmered around them. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought the ground itself had shifted. The searchlight swept past the hatch, but the soldiers didn't react. They looked straight through the opening, their gazes sliding past as if they couldn't see them at all. Daniel blinked. What the hell was that? The girl's lips curved faintly, though her face was still pale. She tapped her temple, then tapped his chest again. Whatever she had done, it had hidden them, just enough. Daniel seized the chance. He slipped out into the shadows, moving quickly along the ruined walls. The patrols passed close, but their eyes never settled on him. Step by step he crossed the courtyard, carrying her like fragile glass. Hayes followed, his rifle clenched tight, muttering prayers under his breath. At the far edge of the ruins, they slipped into an old maintenance tunnel, half collapsed, but still open. The sound of soldiers faded behind them, replaced by the drip of water and the distant groan of shifting stone. Daniel set her down gently on a slab of rock, breathing hard. You saved us, he said, still in disbelief. Her eyes met his and she gave a faint nod. She whispered again, repeating a word softly. He couldn't understand, but he felt the meaning. She wasn't just thanking him. She was telling him that now their fates were bound. Hayes crouched against the wall, wiping sweat from his brow. Hart, this is madness. She's not just some random alien. Whatever she is, Command wanted her dead for a reason. If they catch us, they won't just punish you, they'll execute us both. Daniel didn't answer right away. He was still staring at her, at the strength returning to her even with one arm gone. She wasn't a helpless survivor anymore. She was something else. Important, dangerous even. And somehow, she had chosen him. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady. Then we don't let them catch us. The girl lifted her hand again, brushing her fingers weakly against his. Her touch was warm, alive, and filled with silent promise. For the first time since the war began, Daniel felt that maybe he wasn't just saving her. Maybe she was saving him too. The maintenance tunnel stretched into darkness, lit only by the dim glow of Daniel's wrist lamp. The walls dripped with moisture, and the air smelled of rust and earth. Every step echoed faintly, reminding him they could not linger. But the girl was weakening again, her strength faltering after whatever strange energy she had used to shield them. Daniel set her down carefully against the wall, his breath heavy. Hayes paced nearby, muttering, We can't keep running like this. She's not just anyone, Hart. You saw what she did out there. Normal aliens don't have that kind of power. Daniel glanced at her. She sat slumped against the wall, her silver eyes half closed, skin glowing, faintly under the light. Even injured, even broken, there was something regal about the way she held herself. He had felt it from the first moment, the sense that she was more than just a soldier. She stirred, lifting her head. Her lips parted, and a word came out, clear, but alien. She repeated it, pressing her hand against her chest. Daniel recognized it now. Not her name this time, but something else. A title, maybe? He frowned, trying to mimic the sound. She nodded faintly, then drew another shape on the dirt floor with her trembling finger, a star, encircled by lines. Then she tapped the symbol, then herself. Hayes stepped closer, his face pale. That's not just some soldier, Hart. That's royalty, or military command. Whatever she is, she's high-ranking. That's why Command wanted her gone. Daniel stared at the symbol, his heart pounding. He looked back at her, meeting her silver gaze. You're important, he said softly. She blinked once, slowly, as if to say yes. For a moment, the weight of what he was doing crashed down on him. He wasn't just saving an enemy anymore. He was protecting someone who could change the balance of the entire war. The girl tried to speak again, struggling. Daniel leaned closer, listening. Slowly, haltingly, she shaped a word that sounded closer to his language. Huh, man. The sound stopped him cold. He stared at her in shock. You said human? Her lips curved faintly into the ghost of a smile. She repeated it, firmer this time. Human. Then she touched her chest again, whispering her own name before pointing at him. Human and alien. 2 words, 2 identities, linked by her fragile voice. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. She wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was trying to connect, to bridge the gap between them. Hayes shook his head, backing away. No, this is worse than I thought. If she can speak your language, if she's who I think she is, Hart, we're walking into a death sentence. Command, we'll never forgive this. They'll kill us before they let her live. Daniel ignored him. He knelt beside her again, holding out his hand. She looked at it, then placed her remaining hand gently in his. Her touch was warm, steady despite her weakness. Her silver eyes locked on his, and in that moment, words weren't needed. She was telling him she trusted him fully now, more than anyone else. Above them, the rumble of engines grew louder again. The tunnel walls shook as something massive passed overhead. Tanks, maybe, or heavy carriers. The war was moving closer. They had little time left. Daniel looked at Hayes. You can go back if you want. I won't stop you. But I'm not leaving her. Hayes stared at him for a long moment, torn. Then he cursed under his breath and raised his rifle. Damn it, Hart. If I'm going to die, I might as well die beside the dumbest medic I've ever met. Daniel managed a tight smile. He squeezed the girl's hand once more, then pulled her to her feet carefully. She leaned on him, her steps, weak but determined. They moved deeper into the tunnel, away from the roar of war above. And for the first time, Daniel wondered if saving her wasn't just an act of mercy, but the first step towards something that could end the war entirely. The deeper they moved through the maintenance tunnels, the clearer it became they weren't safe. The low rumble of engines faded, replaced by sharp echoes of boots and distant voices. Search teams, human squads sweeping the ruins above, and, now spreading underground. Daniel tightened his grip around the alien girl's waist, helping her keep steady as they pushed forward. Her steps were weak but determined. Every time she stumbled, her silver eyes burned with a pride that refused to give up. She wasn't used to weakness. It was written in her posture, in the way she clenched her jaw with every painful step. Hayes stopped suddenly at a bend, holding up his rifle. They're here, he hissed. Ahead, light beams cut through the darkness, sweeping across the tunnel walls. Voices barked orders. Sector 5 clear. Move deeper. Daniel's chest tightened. They were being boxed in. The girl's hand gripped his sleeve. She whispered something in her own language, sharp and urgent. Her silver eyes flicked toward the soldiers ahead, then back to him, as though she was telling him to leave her behind. Daniel shook his head firmly. Not a chance. He didn't need a translator to understand her meaning. She was trying to protect him, even if it cost her life, but that wasn't a choice he was willing to accept. Hayes cursed under his breath, scanning the shadows. We can't fight a whole squad. They'll mow us down the second they see us. Daniel glanced around, his eyes falling on a side shaft, half buried in rubble. Narrow, unstable, but it might lead them away. This way, he said. Hayes frowned. That's a collapse waiting to happen. Then pray it collapses after we're through. They slipped into the shaft, the girl, leaning heavily on Daniel. Dust fell from the cracked ceiling, and every step sent a groan through the stone. Behind them, the voices grew louder. Searchlights swept closer, bouncing off the tunnel walls. Then it happened. A sharp beam cut through the shaft entrance, catching Hayes' shoulder. A shout rang out. Contact. Movement in the side passage. Gunfire exploded, bullets sparking against the rock. Daniel threw himself against the wall, shielding the girl with his body. Hayes fired back blindly, yelling, "Move, Hart, move!" Daniel pulled her forward, forcing his legs to push harder. The tunnel narrowed until they were crawling, stones cutting into their hands. Behind them, the gunfire grew louder, closer. Then the ground trembled. An explosion. The shaft shuddered violently, and part of the ceiling gave way. Dust and stone poured down. Daniel shielded the girl again, coughing as the air filled with grit. When the rumble stopped, the tunnel behind them was gone, buried under tons of rock. The soldiers' shouts were muffled now, far beyond the collapse. They had escaped. Barely. Daniel slumped against the wall, his chest heaving. The girl lay beside him, her face pale but her eyes bright. She looked at the blocked passage, then at him. Slowly, she reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold but steady, and she whispered one word, soft but clear. Safe. Daniel stared at her, stunned. The accent was heavy, the sound imperfect, but the meaning was undeniable. She had spoken his language. Haze sank down across, from them sweat running down his face. Safe, huh? For now, maybe. But you know what this means, Hart. You've cut yourself off completely. Command will brand you a deserter. They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Daniel looked at the girl again. She met his gaze without fear, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of his wrist lamp. He remembered the symbol she had drawn. Earlier, the star encircled by lines. Whoever she was, she carried something far greater than herself. And somehow he had been chosen to protect it. He squeezed her hand gently. Then let them hunt. They won't find us. For the first time since the war began, Daniel wasn't thinking about survival alone. He was thinking about what saving her might mean. For her people. For his people. Maybe even for the war itself. And as the three of them sat in the darkness, the sound of the buried soldiers fading behind them, Daniel knew the real battle hadn't even started yet. The tunnel narrowed until it opened into a vast cavern, lit by shafts of moonlight breaking through cracks in the surface above. The silence here was different, heavy, almost sacred. Daniel lowered the alien girl gently against a rock, brushing dust from her hair. She was exhausted, her body trembling from the effort of their escape, but her silver eyes still glowed with stubborn strength. Hayes leaned against the wall, wiping sweat from his brow. This is it, Hart. End of the line. We can't keep running forever. Daniel didn't answer. His focus was on her. She had saved them with her strange power, survived wounds that would have killed anyone else, and still found the strength to walk beside him. Whoever she wasn't just another enemy soldier. The girl stirred, lifting her hand weakly. She traced that same circle over star symbol in the dust, her gaze fixed on Daniel. Then she whispered her name again, firmer this time, followed by a string of words he couldn't understand. Her tone carried weight, like an oath. Daniel leaned closer. I don't know what you're saying, he admitted softly. She frowned, then tapped her chest. Star, she said haltingly. Her accent was thick, but the word was clear. She pointed upward toward the moonlit cracks. Then she touched her missing arm, her voice trembling. Peace. Hayes stiffened. Did she just say peace? Daniel's breath caught. She wasn't just royalty, wasn't just important. She was a symbol, a figure who had been fighting not only for survival, but for an end to the war. That's why Command wanted her dead. Keeping her alive meant more than mercy. It meant hope. The cavern suddenly shook as an explosion echoed above. Rocks rained down, and lights flickered in the distance. Human soldiers were coming. Daniel's heart hammered. They had been found. The girl looked at him with urgency. She whispered something sharp, pointing toward the far side of the cavern where another passage glowed faintly. It was an exit, maybe even a way back to her people. She wanted him to take her there. Hayes grabbed Daniel's arm. Think about what you're doing. If you hand her over to her people, you'll never be able to go back. You'll be a traitor forever. Daniel looked at the girl again. Her silver eyes burned into his. Even with one arm gone, even broken, she carried herself like someone who would not stop fighting for her cause. She was not asking for pity. She was asking for trust. Daniel tightened his jaw. I've already made my choice. The soldiers' shouts grew louder, boots pounding across the rocks above. Daniel lifted her into his arms once more. She leaned against him, whispering his name, broken, imperfect, but filled with meaning. Da, Ni El. With haze covering their retreat, they pushed toward the far passage. Bullets sparked against the stone, voices yelling for them to stop. But Daniel didn't look back. All he saw was the path forward. All he felt was the weight of her trust in his arms. They burst through the narrow exit into the cold night air. Stars stretched endlessly, overhead brilliant against the darkness. The girl lifted her gaze, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. For the first time, Daniel saw a flicker of peace in her expression. Behind them, Hayes fired a last burst before diving through the exit, rocks collapsing to seal the way. The soldiers' shouts faded, trapped on the other side. Daniel set her down gently on the grass outside the cavern. She looked at him, her hand trembling as she reached for his. Their fingers touched, fragile yet unbreakable. "Human," she whispered, then after a long pause, "Friend." Daniel's chest tightened. He had saved her life, but in that moment he realized she had given him something greater. Proof that even in the darkest war, trust could cross the gulf between species. The night was quiet now, only the stars watching. Daniel knew the war wasn't over, not yet. But with her alive, with her people waiting for her return, maybe there was finally a chance, and he would stand by her side until the very end.